if nothing changes and all of these things that are not working in your life or are broken or just, draining you or are negative influences or toxic or whatever, if nothing changes, then, and if you're not okay with that, then you need to make a move now. Don't wait 10 years from now, 5 years from now. If you're not going to be, if nothing changes, then you got to make a move now. And that's what I did. And I changed pretty much everything in my life from that defining question, because I knew that there needed to be a breaking point. There needed to be a change. And I just had to really get honest with myself. And it was really hard. I had to start over in many areas of my life.
Welcome to the Pave Your Paradise podcast. I'm Mandy Ross, international media personality, speaker, writer, life cheerleader, and coach. Each episode, I'll share a guest or an idea to help you blast through your limiting beliefs, nourish your soul, and connect with yourself to take your relationships, health, business, and life to a next level. We don't play small. We're meant for great things. We take our struggles and turn them into slam dunk successes. This is the place for you to create your best you so you can pave your personal path to paradise. Are you with me? Let's do this. Thank you so much for joining me on Pave Your Paradise podcast. Michela, it is a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Excited to be here.
Oh, I know. It's been a little while since you and I have caught up, and what a perfect opportunity than putting you on my podcast.
Absolutely. I'm excited for our chat today. Thanks for the opportunity to be on your show.
Absolutely. You're definitely someone who I highly respect, and I think you will just bestow so much wisdom on my audience today. So one question that I always ask everybody who's on, what was the first thing you did when you woke up this morning?
I ease my way into the day. So this morning I opened my eyes and I just lazed around for about 10 minutes in bed and just kind of orienting myself to the day. That's the first thing I did. So really it's nothing. I do nothing.
That is okay. I would rather you say that. I've had some interesting answers. So that is awesome. Now, aside from work, what gets you up in the morning?
I think it really depends on what is happening that day, that week. So there's the general things that I'm excited about with regards to the clients that I'm working with, or maybe I'm producing content and I'm excited about that, or the people that I'm meeting with. So there's that piece. So that's part of it in terms of the content of what I'm going to be doing and engaging in that. And then the bigger picture is really just an opportunity to really, live out that purposeful work and just move the needle forward on that generally. So that's kind of the bigger why in terms of what gets me excited. And then, of course, all the things that I'm doing are related to that why. So I get excited about how it plays out throughout the day and the week as well.
That's a really big one. I think a lot of people can resonate with that in having goals that you set daily. What has been the highlight of your week so far?
The highlight of my week so far. These questions are hard. Is
that a compliment?
Yeah, to your interview skills. Oh my gosh, I am not the best thinker on my feet. I need to think back. Let's see.
That comes to mind. Don't overthink it, Michela. Don't overthink it.
The highlight of the week is, I would have to say, I went to an event on Tuesday evening, and I hadn't been to a business networking type of event in quite a while. To be honest, I was a little bit nervous because like I said, I hadn't been to one in a while, and I used to run events and that sort of thing. And I'm traveling in and out of Vancouver a lot. And so I was really pleasantly surprised by who was in the room and the energy in the room and the positivity and the willingness for people to share and be vulnerable. And it was just a really inspiring evening of connection that I was not expecting at all. I think that to me has been the highlight so far, and it's only Thursday. So the best is yet to come, right?
I love that. Yeah, it's amazing how much, especially I think when you're a solo or an entrepreneur, how much those events, like sharing that space with like-minded and like-hearted individuals is so imperative, because a lot of times we get so stuck in our own little kind of bubble of what we're doing. And then you go out and you connect, is the beautiful word you used, with so many other people that are on a positive trajectory like yourself. Just that energy that's shared is amazing.
Exactly. And especially, I'm an introvert. And so I don't get energy from those kinds of events. And I'm really protective of my energy. I try and practice energy management as much as possible. That was another piece of it is, as somebody who is an introvert and who doesn't necessarily get energized by being around people and being engaging with people all the time, it was, again, a pleasant surprise, because it's a good reminder about what happens when, if you're in the right environment with the right people, it actually does make a difference. It can, even as an introvert, it can give you energy. It's really all about those environments that you're in and who's there and what the intention is around that. And it's really powerful. So it can be either a really good energizing experience, or I'm sure we've all walked into a room where we just feel drained after having been there even for an hour. So
Absolutely. I completely understand. Yeah, it's one or the other with me too. It's like it can either be incredibly uplifting and energizing, or the total opposite, where it's just draining and heavy. And like, I'm like, get me out of here.
absolutely.
You chatted a little bit about going to an event and the fact that you're an entrepreneur and that you're an introvert. But I will say one of the main reasons I really wanted to have you on the podcast today is because of the incredible work that you are doing in the world professionally. But on a personal level, I know your story. And when you shared your story originally with me, I was just so moved by the amount of personal growth that you have achieved in your life. And I would love it if you could share more about yourself and your background, both personally and professionally, with my audience.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for asking. Every time I get asked this question, it's the story comes together, right? And each piece sort of pulls itself together in a new and different way. So I think it's really important that we do share our stories, because it's part of the growth process, I believe, in doing that, when we share our stories with others. And my story has taken me many years to piece together. Of course, hindsight is always so wise. Hindsight is 2020. And so over the years, I have looked back to piece the bits and pieces together. And really the story as it is today, the main story of what drives me to do what I do and what has driven the decisions that I've made in my life in terms of my work and professionally, and my personal growth work, really starts when I'm a child. And so my parents are immigrants. They immigrated from Italy to Canada in the late 50s. And they came in search of opportunity and a better life for themselves. This was after the Second World War. There wasn't a lot of opportunity in Italy, and so they came here. They took the courageous step to move without a plan, really, and they each came here with little money and zero English language skills. Sort of a typical immigrant story of that era. They cast a better life, a vision for a better life for themselves in Canada. They became business owners. They had little education, and so it was sort of the easiest access point was to become an entrepreneur. So they did that, and they worked really hard, and everything was for the family. And it was a traditional patriarchal Italian home that I grew up in. My father, who was 5'11", 180 pounds, could blow a fuse quite easily when he disapproved of something. And as a shy introverted child, I was fearful, looking at it through the eyes of that 6-year-old child. So like when I used to speak in English, he used to scold me and say, speak in Italian, and I used to sort of shrink back at the sound of his voice. And because of this, my mother was constantly walking on eggshells and taught my sister and I to not upset your father. And I remember I was 6 years old, eating dinner with my parents as we did every night, big Italian dinner, lasting several hours. As a child, having to sit at the dinner table until everyone was done eating. And each night, like every other night, the dinner conversation ended up in some sort of an argument. And when I asked questions and challenged my father's opinion, my mother would kick me under the table and she'd say, basta, enough. And so it was like, don't speak, right? Was the message that I got. And I can't count the number of times that I was kicked in the shins just for trying to share my opinion or say something at the table, let alone questioning my father. But I was 6 years old and I remember thinking, wow, it's dangerous to talk. Every time I speak, bad things happen. I believe that in that moment during those years, this negative imprint just landed in my brain, which said, don't speak because it's dangerous to do so. And so I spoke less and less, and I guarded myself more and more until it kind of stunted that growth in a way. By 8 years old, I had developed a debilitating fear of speaking to the point where I stuttered quite a lot. And I, couldn't even get the words out like that. It wasn't 100% of the time, but it was happening enough where I was so embarrassed and so frustrated. And I remember one incident, I was 10 years old and I was with my grandmother and started to stutter and words were stumbling out of my mouth and she was scolding me and why do you do that? And why do you speak like that? And stop doing that. That's not nice. And by not nice, she meant, you're making a bad impression, right? And an important Italian cultural value is all about la bella figura, like preserving good face, and, what will people think? And so I'm developing this set of beliefs, right? About, people are going to be thinking badly and people are judging me and I'm having trouble speaking. And so I'm going to be made fun of. And all these things ended up happening. And I was made fun of and I was judging myself and I spoke less and less. People thought I was stupid. And, and so that all compiled sort of emotional dysfunction, psychological abuse, if you will, just layered into my brain. And I started hiding parts of myself, didn't accept myself for who I was. If I couldn't speak without stuttering, I didn't want to speak at all. No matter how hard I tried to get rid of this speech problem, it was still there. Every morning when I woke up, I could pray as hard as I wanted to, but I tried to get help, but the help just wasn't there. The doctor said, it's all in your head. You just need to talk slower. Other people said, you have a motor skill problem. Your brain isn't wired right. Everyone told me that I had a problem and that it couldn't be fixed. And the thing of it is that in my heart of hearts, I knew that this wasn't who I was, because prior to 8 years old, I was free-spirited and, reading aloud and having no problem.
So you were aware of the trauma. That's like your soul knew and your gut knew that wasn't you never resonated with that actually being the real you.
Exactly. But I didn't, at the time, I probably wouldn't have articulated it that way. But looking back on it now, that's exactly what was happening, because I could feel it and I could sense it. And a highly sensitive child. And so I felt it. And so really that feeling was what drove me. And, maybe you call it inner wisdom, maybe you call it spirit, maybe you call it intuition, whatever you call it. But that inner voice, that inner knowing of, no, you don't have to settle for this. This is not what your life needs to look like. That's what led me to make the decisions that I made, because I started to bump up against where I was hiding and allowing the speech impediment to be a hindrance. And it was showing up in college. It was showing up in jobs. It was showing up with friends and family. And it was really debilitating and stopping me from living my life. I was destined to, not have a job and not, or do a job where I didn't have to talk to people, and so that really then led me to, I think I was about 18 years old, to say enough is enough. I need help. And I was the one that sought out my first therapist. And then the road continued from there. And so that's how it all got started, if you will.
Yeah, I just want to say too, thank you so much for sharing your story. You know how I feel about sharing, and you know how I feel about sharing your personal stories.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, Michela, every time you tell me this story, because I've heard it a few times now about your childhood, my heart literally just listening to you breaks inside. And I just want to hug that little 6-year-old. Like, I just want to hug her so badly. And it's not to say, like, I get that I'm sure your parents are very loving, but they just did the best that they could in that moment. I know that you've gone through a lot of forgiveness process and all of that. So this is by no means just for people listening to, it's not about like a harp on your parents, but that's just what happened. And that's just the way it unfolded. Just listening to it though, I think there's so many of us that can resonate with things that our parents did to us in our past that left such a traumatic imprint. Something that sounds as simple as someone saying, don't talk, or someone kicking you in the shin. Those things over time leave such a dramatic and traumatic imprint on us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes we don't realize with those emotional pieces, there's emotional pain, psychological, mental, physical. There's so many different ways that the traumas can present themselves, in our environments, in our families, in our, where we grow up, and we don't realize it. What I think is an interesting piece of this is that in my case, that wound then became my greatest gift.
Well, that's just it. That's why I love your story so much, because in order for you to actually turn the tragedy into a triumph, it required you to do something that was one of the hardest things for you to do, which was actually speak up, literally.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like anything, it's a process. So I think it first starts with that inner drive, or that, that fire to say, no, I don't have to settle for this. This is not who I am. And so that is the spark. And that is a really, really important piece, I believe, because it's that spark that you need to have in order to persevere through the healing process. The healing process, for any of us who have gone through it and who are on it right now, it's hard. And so to always hook into that spark of knowing why you're doing it and why it's important, and that in any of that wounding and that trauma there's a gift, there's seeds in there of wisdom. And I believe it's a call. Our spirit is calling us forward to heal that, so that we can evolve and learn and grow and do what we need to do, in this lifetime, right?
Amen, sister. Putting out that little chapter that you're going to be talking about next. You are such a beautiful, like that metamorphosis, butterfly effect kind of story for me. You're the epitome of that, because you literally went from having a speech impediment due to trauma in your childhood, and now you are a renowned international professional speaker. Like, talk about major transformation.
Yeah, it's kind of bizarre actually when I think about it, but then it isn't, because it's to me, it just seems like, well, yeah, I mean, it has to do with the voice. And so there's something there. There's something about using that voice and then looking for ways to find platforms to then continue to use it. So continuing to use it is also part of that healing process, because I'm still on it, right?
You said you went to a counselor, you started, then that spark turned into a huge journey of self-development and healing. So going from that to where you are today, I know there's a lot of different things we could cover, but if you had to kind of nutshell basically what you're up to now, what would you say like, your main intention and purpose and all of that is surrounding that today?
Today, how this journey has unfolded is that what I've been healing from myself is something I believe that whatever that wound is that we have, that trauma, and we, when we go through that healing process and we really dig into that and come out the other side, there's so much knowledge and wisdom that we have to share, that we've gone through, we've been there, we walk the talk, we know at an intimate level what that looks like, what it feels like, what needs to happen. Where that comes into what I'm doing now is this whole thing about the voice was really about the wounding around not being seen and not being heard. So that's really what it boiled down to for me around the speech impediment and the lack of voice. And so that really has then become, once I discovered that that's really what it was about, then I use that as the nugget, if you will, to bring into my work. When I work with my clients, business coaching, marketing consulting, self-leadership coaching, it is about the true nugget of that is being seen and being heard, because when we're not getting our message out there in the world, we're unable to make an impact. So I've chosen to bring these lessons through the business model rather than becoming a life coach. I'm teaching these principles through the business model. And so my training and my specialty is in business growth and marketing and sales, because my whole life has been about growth. So growth is another piece that I hook into, because that's just that's who I am. I'm all about growth. And in order to grow, part of that is really around giving yourself permission to be seen and be heard in your business, understanding how to be perceived in the marketplace by your market so that they are resonating with your message, so that they're engaging with your services, so that you can grow your business and you can make more of an impact. And that's how I've pulled it into the business model. So it is the essence of the brand. And then how I execute that is through strategies and tactics around sales, marketing, systems, to ultimately help business owners grow their business and take their business to the next level. So my specialty is really helping business owners when they're stuck to move forward to the next stage. So it's about helping them get traction to move forward to the next stage. There are 5 basic stages of business development: visibility, credibility, profitability, sustainability, and then scalability. And so I can help business owners up level through each of the stages using those, having that be seen, be heard as that underpinning. I really help people navigate their growth on purpose. And that is what I help them do.
Ooh, I love that. You help people navigate on purpose. That just feels so good saying that. That's a delicious saying.
Yeah.
I will say. That's a really good one.
Yeah, it is a good one, because when I went through the self-discovery process of really understanding who I am and who I am as a person, who I am as a business, what really came out of that discovery was that I offer people a compass. That's one of my special skills. I give them a compass and a roadmap, and I help them navigate in a very strategic way and a purposeful way. I think once you go through that process of really understanding who you are and what you're all about, it's very powerful, because then that gives you something to, almost like an archetype that you can wrap your work around, and then you start to be that, you live that. So that's the journey of how that all came about.
Oh, I love this, Michela. Thank you so much for sharing that. And what a beautiful tie between where you've come from and what you're doing today. And again, your story to me is just so inspiring, because it really is that beautiful transformation from starting somewhere that was such a tragedy and turning that really into something that could then be a triumph for yourself. And I'm very curious because Pave Your Paradise podcast, as you know, is all about really just paving that paradise within, creating that inner happiness so that your relationships, your health, your business, your life can be happier and healthier and more harmonious. And I'm very curious because you're so self-aware and it's just so ingrained in all that you do with your clients. Do you find when you approach your clients and you start to peel back those layers as a coach, do you find the area that their business is lacking or struggling the most in? Do you find that when you start to peel back those layers, does it tend to stem from a childhood something, like a lack of something or some sort of childhood trauma?
Yes, in a nutshell, there is always some sort of wounding, if you will, that is attached to whatever it is they're struggling with. It's interesting how the process reveals itself and how it all unfolds. So a client might come to me and say, I want to grow my business. I need help with, marketing and sales, strategy and a plan. Okay, great. So we get, we start to sort of focus in on the very mechanics of the business and to assess the strengths and gaps in their business model and their sales and their marketing and what their goals are and where they want to go. And we start there. But then what I've noticed is, we can put together a plan and then I help them walk through that plan and support them through the execution of that. And typically there's a tipping point that happens. So at the beginning, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of clarity, a lot of confidence that we have a plan, we have a roadmap for how to get there. They start working the plan, we start getting traction, things are good. And then a couple of months in, something starts to happen. And when we take a look at that, it's always they're then bumping up against themselves is what's happening. So that's why I always bring in the diagnostics. That's one of my superpowers, if you will, is diagnostics around, what is really going on here? What is the truth of what's going on here in your business? And then I use that
figuring out like the parallel.
Yes, exactly. So for example, we could take a look at what's going on in the business. Well, maybe they are, maybe there's something around, the money piece, right? So, they're undercharging or they're over delivering or they're, attracting the wrong type of client. For example, one client of mine, she just kept attracting the wrong type of client, like people who were broken almost, people who really needed a lot of hand-holding, a lot of extra help, a lot of extra attention. And so when she was sharing the symptoms of what's happening in the business, like, why can't I attract this, higher level client that's going to pay me more money and I know I'm worth it and all this kind of stuff. And when we really dove into that, what I discovered and what came up for me in that session, because I work both intuitively and strategically when I work with clients. So I'm always sensing into things and using, both of those skills. What was coming up for me with her was that she was putting out too much of the mother energy.
So like having to babysit essentially almost, or fix, kind of like nurture clients versus, okay.
Exactly. So in that case, she was, she's the ultimate nurturer, right? She's the ultimate giver, overgiver almost. And so that was frustrating her and that was working against her in her business. And that's where she was spinning her wheels. That's the piece that was coming up in that moment, right? And so that thing is not going to be solved by strategies and plans. That thing is going to be solved by figuring out what's really going on and what's behind that. First of all, recognizing how you're showing up in the world and are you putting out that sort of energy or are you acting that sort of way? And then dismantling that and then seeing how to do things a little bit differently and rebuilding that habit and healing that wounding, because that is that over-giving, over-nurturing, over-mothering nature is...
It's a mechanism or a learned behavior.
Yeah, exactly. And it's typically related to something deeper, which might be related to something like, I don't deserve to be loved unless I'm doing for others, or I'm not worthy unless I am giving of myself, or I don't matter because it's really about the other person. There's some kind of wounding. There's some kind of wounding there that is then created these behaviors that are then causing those actions, right? And those reactions from the client. So it's all related, and it requires, I think, us to be really courageous to understand that the business journey, being a business owner, I always like to say your business is your spiritual teacher in disguise.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, whatever is undealt, whatever wounding you have that your spirit is calling you to heal in this lifetime, it'll show up if you're paying attention.
Yes, awareness. I think awareness is like the big word that I was getting when you were describing this, because whether you work for someone else or you're a business owner yourself, which is the clients that you tend to work with are very successful individuals and they're finding themselves stuck in some area, hence why they want your help. You're helping them to basically figure out things that are far deeper than a surface level of just a business problem.
Exactly. It's a human problem, right? And you as a human being, you are in your business, running your business. Your business success will pretty much come down to how well you're working on your inner game as well as your outer game.
Business owners and or anyone who's working away, if you're having an issue come up with work, chances are it's a reflection of something in your personal life or yourself personally. So exactly. I would say go and before you investigate the business, check in on yourself first.
Exactly. And that's key. And to also be kind to yourself as you're going through that process and almost expect that to happen, because it really will. And it's, we should welcome that, because it's showing up for a reason, for us to address it, for us to heal it so that we can become more whole, because that's really what we're here to do. And when we become more whole, we become happier and more balanced, and we are truly free. We're not slaves to what other people think or what happens in our external environment. And so isn't that what we all want? Like, pretty much.
Yes.
That's
paradise. We
exactly.
want our inner paradise to reflect the outer paradise. I love this, Michela. Oh, you so get it, girl.
Yeah, exactly. It's fascinating.
I'm going to segue into some questions that are a little bit more about just your personal journey. So what do you wish you had known when you first started out?
I think what I wish I would have known earlier was that it is okay to be yourself. I spent a lot of time trying to hide who I was because I didn't feel like I was good enough. I was imperfect. I was bad. If I had had the wisdom of someone to tell me, or, just the wisdom to know this myself, that it's okay. Like, imperfect is the new perfect,
Yes.
I think that would have been really helpful.
I know that you obviously shared your story and the transformation that led you to want to be what you are today. But if you had to really just pinpoint one thing in particular, what really compelled you to want to become a coach and a leader for others and a speaker?
So that has been a gradual process. If you had even asked me this question 5 years ago or 10 years ago, when I initially launched my private practice, it's almost 10 years ago, I would not have known what to say. I mean, that was never my vision. My vision was always to heal, heal myself, work on myself. And through that, then the path started to unfold and become clear in terms of what direction I wanted to take the business. So when I initially started out, it was purely marketing consulting. And that's because that's what I knew and that's where I started. And so I started walking the path knowing that that wasn't the end journey. That's all I knew. I knew that this wasn't the end journey, I don't really know what the end journey is. All I know is that I have to continue to work on myself and things will start to become clear. And they did. And every year it evolved. So, the marketing consulting, then I realized that, I can provide marketing plans to people to get more visibility, but it's not getting implemented. Oh, why isn't it getting implemented? Well, they're bumping up against themselves. Okay, well, now I want to help with that, to help them unlock that piece. So then I went back and got retrained, added more skills. And so I just keep adding more skills and more training to my toolbox as I see what my customers and what the market needs, like where they're getting stuck next. And so it's been that evolutionary process of just adding skill set on top of skill set on top of skill set over the past 20 years I've been in business. The first half I worked for fast growth startups, and then the back half I've been in my own practice. So it's just one layer at a time. And then, as I continue to work on my own, do my own personal work, I got more and more clarity around this notion of my story and using my voice. I was then getting more clarity on my message. And then I was ready to start sharing the message once I had gotten to that point where I was clear. And that's when I wanted to then take it to the stage and write more and start my own podcast. And it just kept evolving as I was doing the personal growth work and paying attention to what my customers and my clients, where they were getting stuck. And then I just paralleled those two things and wove them in. And that's where I got my inspiration and my motivation and my direction, if you will, partly by accident and partly intentional, just marrying those two together and continuing to walk that path. And then it's constantly evolving, which is the great thing because I'm constantly evolving.
I love that. And I love that you brought up the word you specifically used was toolbox, because I often refer to that on my podcast about there not being there's never one journey that's going to be the right one for everybody, especially when it comes to healing and self-growth and self-development and diving into your spiritual life and your emotions and your physical and mental well-being. We all basically, I believe, start with a toolbox, and you basically spend your life filling it with the right tools that work specifically and individually for you to evolve. And so interesting that you use that exact word, because that's how I like to describe it. One of those tools that I really believe equates to a lot of people's success are daily habits. And I'm very curious to know what some of your daily habits are that you swear by for your success.
I agree with the daily habits. Those are hugely important. Over the years, I've developed various habits that I weave in to my day. Let me just give some context here with regards to the habits. Is I believe in nurturing each part of ourselves. So we've got what we eat, where we spend our time, how we manage our energy, who we hang around with, what our environment looks like in terms of our physical environment. So I have developed habits in as many of these areas as possible because I find that I take a holistic approach to everything. So for me, that really works. So as an example, it would be making sure that I get enough sleep. So I'm in bed usually by 10:30, and then, I'm up maybe by 8. I actually sleep quite a lot and I need that sleep and I know I need it. So I just organize myself around that instead of trying to force myself to do something that doesn't work for my body. In terms of food, nourishing myself is really important. So I eat 3 meals a day. I sit down and I don't have any distractions when I'm eating. I try and make all of my own food as much as practical and eat organic food and all of that kind of stuff. So eating and sleeping, hugely important. I like to take baths. So sometimes I take a bath in the morning to just center myself and get ready for the day. And think about what it is that I want to accomplish and, what kind of energy and attitude I'm bringing into the day. Sometimes I take the bath at nighttime and do it more as a reflection on the day. But those have been really important for me. Screen time is huge. So I don't have any technology in my bedroom. I don't use my cell phone for my alarm clock. I don't, have any screens in the bedroom at all. Sleeping is, for me, it's a sacred thing, just like eating is a sacred thing. So I don't do technology while I'm eating or in bed. And for me, that's really important. As a sensitive, I have to have that unplugged time. Otherwise, if I always feel like I'm plugged into something, then I'm constantly feeling drained. So that's another important piece for me. Environment is really important in terms of making sure that I have a space that's dedicated to work, a space that's dedicated to my reflections or meditations or intentions, which is another habit that I have on a daily basis, usually in the morning. I set my intentions. I do my, prayers and affirmations. I sit quietly. There's a lot of reflection time that I build into my day. And I also journal as another way of reflecting and processing. So I leave a lot of white space for processing time so that I can really, integrate what I'm learning and be aware and just take a really conscious approach to my life. So everything that I do, at least I try as much as possible to be conscious about how I'm moving throughout my day and really trying to make the best choices for my optimum, mental health, physical health,
yes,
all that kind of stuff. So it's actually,
yes,
sometimes I feel like it's a full-time job, to be honest. And
self-care is a full-time job. Thank you for saying that, but it's true.
It's totally true. It's a full-time job. And so like all these things, like reading quietly, meditating, doing the yoga, getting, going, exercising or hitting the gym, like all of these things that I try and weave into my day in some form or another, or weave into my week. It takes effort. It takes effort and energy, and it's a
Commitment,
dedication.
consistency.
Yeah, it's a dedication.
It's like a full-time relationship to yourself through self-care rituals.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And it's just like anything in life. If you're really serious about that thing that you're trying to achieve or do or to heal or the goal that you have, that's what it requires. And so for me, it's been a choice, and sometimes I get it right and sometimes I don't, but I keep showing up,
I love that you're saying this though, Michela, because I think for a lot of people, it can feel overwhelming at times, but when you actually shift the mindset around it to what you're describing right now, for people who want more success, because it's like so many people equate like, what does the word success mean? A lot of people equate that to having amazing relationship, having their purposeful work and their career success, and also their health, and like all of these things lining up and being successful, quote unquote. It really always stems from you and really how much you're devoting your time and energy into self-care first, because that's ultimately going to reflect and help you to achieve all of that other stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, let's be honest, I wasn't always like this. So I am a recovering perfectionist, recovering busyholic, recovering overgiver, recovering do for everybody person. I mean, I am in recovery to all of those things, right? And so
girlfriend, on all of the above.
Right? And so when you're in recovery, that's when I find you have to pull in the tools. Otherwise, you drown, right? It just doesn't, you can't function. And so, and it's difficult to heal on your own. So it's by, learning by fire, so to speak, right? So, I mean, even to this day, I recovering overachiever, like all of these things. And, you should have seen my calendar, when I, for the first couple of years starting out, I mean, I didn't have any white space in my calendar. It was like blocked with, one meeting after the next. I got to do this, I got to do that, hustle here, hustle there. And it's just, I kept like going on this 6-week cycle of burning out and literally just like ending up in the fetal position, on the floor, like rocking back and forth. Right. So, it's a process of, it has been a process of, like you said, building those tools in the toolkit. And there's nothing greater than when you are forced to learn because you're suffering so much and there's so much pain, whatever that looks like, whether it's emotional, physical, mental pain and suffering from trauma or from wounding. There's nothing like that kind of intensity to really light a fire under you to find a solution so that you can be okay.
Amazing stuff. Oh my goodness. So many golden nuggets of wisdom in that. You did mention something I'm curious to dive a little deeper into. I'm such a fan of morning routines, and everybody that I can think of who's achieved some degree of success in their life usually has a morning routine that they like to follow. And, people's can look very different from one to the next, but I'm very curious what your morning routine looks like.
My morning routine. So when I get up in the morning, I usually lay in bed. So like I said, there's no phones. I don't check my phone or anything like that. I just lay there for a couple of minutes and just really kind of allow myself that time to give gratitude and to just sort of be intentional about how I'm going to then get up and what I'm going to do next. And I find it's a pause, and the pause is important so that I don't get up and start doing things right away, because that to me that never works. So that intentional pause in the morning is almost like a reminder for me to slow down. You're entering your day. How do you want to do that? Like you are just about to start another big day full of possibilities. What do you want that to look like? Now's your time to shape that. And so that pause gives me that sort of break to set that intention and be purposeful about what I want to do next. So that's the very first thing that happens. And then typically I go to my yoga mat and sit, and that's, just a very short sitting practice, again, to say my, affirmations and my intentions for the day. I have sort of a protocol, if you will, that I go through, and it's really a set of intentions and affirmations that I've collected over time. And sometimes it's something that I'm working with, like a belief, like a new belief that I'm working with, that I'm working on. And so I remind myself what that is, and so usually it's, some people call it mantras or prayers, but combination of that. And then typically I make coffee because I love coffee, and so
first coffee.
Yes, but first coffee. And I love coffee, and coffee has, like, everything is energy, right? And so what I've discovered about coffee is that it's not only the caffeine that gives me energy, it's just the coffee. Like, it's just the taste of it. I love it.
It's a ritual. It's literally like, I think you and I would resonate in this, even when you're describing the bath. Like, for me, when I take a shower or bath, it's almost like it can really reflect how my whole energy goes into the whole process of it, in making it an actual something. Like, the shower bath is becoming like a cleansing opportunity for me from my day, versus, with a coffee, maybe it's you sitting there and just being observant of the smell of it and the warmth of the cup, and just making it so much more than just having a cup of coffee.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is, because the way that I look at things is very similar to the way you do as well. For me, everything is a meditation practice, to be honest. So whether,
Yes.
like
Oh, I
whether I'm,
love that.
yeah, it is. And whether I am making coffee or whether I'm cooking dinner, I love cooking and being in the kitchen, whether I'm even washing the dishes or folding laundry, whatever it is, to me, that's reflection time. That's just no thinking time. That is just trying to be
Being fully
present.
present. Yes, we
Yeah.
both. It's
Yeah.
literally it's a gift to yourself to really be present in that
It,
moment.
it really is. And, because in this day and age, there's so much noise and there is so many distractions. And I feel like at times everyone wants a piece of me. Everyone wants a piece of my time, my energy, they want my eyeballs on something. They want my feedback on something. I mean, that's just, human beings. Like when you interact with people, that's what it's all about, right? We have to interact. And so I find that my primary focus is always, how can I buy back those moments of time? How can I buy back those quiet moments? Because the rest of the day is crazy. I mean, it is
So
literally,
loud.
it's so loud, it's so crazy. And so instead of going crazy with the day and being pulled along, and then only to realize at 10 o'clock at night that you haven't really eaten properly, you haven't gotten any exercise, you haven't really, set any intentions or done anything intentional, you've just been dragged around. Like, I feel like if I do that, I feel like I've just been beaten up. So, and it's not practical to like take 2 hours out of the day and just sit there and meditate, right?
Totally.
So it's about, how can we bring more practicality from these tools that we learn on the yoga mat, from the tools that we learn
Mhm.
from reading the books and from watching the inspirational videos. How can we, those little tools that we learn, how can we then weave them through our day-to-day lives so that we are creating that yin and yang experience throughout the day?
Yes. Totally. I love it because it brings us back to the beautiful experience of your coffee each morning and you just being fully present and the fact that you love it so much. And I could just picture you just totally taking that whole thing in and like for other people to just like slam them and you're standing there like just like totally invigorated by this entire process. So after the coffee, then what do you do in your morning routine?
So then would be the bath. And the bath is, again, a place where I am, there's bubbles and there's candles and the lights are out. And I typically have an audio that I listen to. I've got a couple of different audios, so a guided meditation, if you will. And each of them are different. So one of them is around goals, like a goal blueprint. Others, there's various things around just some of the goals that I set out for myself, and just a guided meditation around that. So a lot of visualization, really. I pick a different audio to listen to, and sometimes I don't do the audio. Sometimes I just sit, in silence and just think through, what I'm going to bring to the day and what that looks like and what I want this day to feel like. And so a visualization in and of itself, but not necessarily guided by audio. So that's where that usually comes in. And so at this point, I still have not checked my email or turned my computer on, because I need to be ready to do that mentally, physically, because I know that once I turn the devices on and I get going, I'm in it, then
Yeah, you're
I'm
fully
in,
engaged in that then.
yeah, then I'm fully engaged in that. And then I don't usually stop until lunchtime. And then I'll get up from my computer and make myself lunch, sit down and eat it away from my computer and just in silence usually, or just quiet, and so that's kind of that's the morning.
Wow, there's so much I think that others can take away from that. Not just the actual routine and activities that you specifically choose to do, but I think just your overall presence and being present in all that you do is just that alone. If someone who is listening right now could take that practice of actually being there now, and I'm so guilty of this, being distracted at times, or, trying to multitask and do things. And if we can all just be a little bit more present in the moments as they're actually happening, what a transformation I think anyone would achieve in their lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because there's so many benefits, right? Even just that break from the noise is so beneficial. It's like, it's almost like that breath of fresh air
Yes.
that happens, right? And
I'm not going to say it's just digital because there's a lot of distractions. Sometimes our own minds can be their own distractions, but I will say digital detox or just external detox, that is, I think, a key in really just in increasing inner joy, in being more in tune with yourself, and really just having that inner dialogue where everything else is turned off. That goes, back to what we talked about originally with just having that inner voice. It's like when you can tune out, you're able to tap in to that inner voice that you have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that requires practice, and it requires focus, because if we've got too much noise externally, then we can't hear ourselves. We can't really tune in into, what our spirit or, what our higher self is asking for. So one of the things that, I built into my practice on a daily basis is those moments to tune in. And so I almost give myself a timeout in some cases, where I just go back, in the middle of the day, I'm working on something and I'm stuck, or I'm spinning my wheels on something, or can't make a decision, or what have you. And I literally walk away from the computer, sit on my yoga mat, and just be quiet and tune in and ask questions. And I think this is a really important tool and skill that we all have available to us, is to tap into that inner wisdom. But that requires us to like you said, to turn inwards and to start having that conversation, that dialogue within ourselves. And I think as the world gets more and more noisy and so many distractions, I think, I think there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of anxiety around. People don't know how to necessarily make the right decision, because there's so much noise and so many possibilities, so many options, and,
Yes.
so many distractions, and so is telling me to do it this way. And, on social media, I'm hearing, this is the thing to do, and everybody's got an opinion about everything. And so at a certain point, that is crazy if we can't tune in and just find out what we already know to be true, and tap into that wisdom. We have such great wisdom within ourselves.
You and I are so similar in so many ways, and I love that we like vibe at the same frequency, and so many things that you say, I'm just like, And I actually did a podcast on the topic of indecision because of exactly what you're describing right now, and just that we're living in such a loud world right now where it's just so hard to be able to even tune into ourselves. So I created a whole podcast on indecision and helping people navigate on making the decisions in their lives. And it is all about tuning within and really helping people to ask themselves helpful questions in order to get to that end answer that they're seeking. But it's all within. Like that's the point that I'm trying to make now, is that it's all within yourself, as you're saying. And that's a beautiful segue actually into one of the questions that I have for you, which is what support or resources are available, and what are your personal recommendations as far as things that you've struggled with? Like, what are some of your go-tos? What are some other support or resources you can recommend for people out there?
Oh, there are so many, especially now with the growth of the personal development, health and wellness industry. One of the things is, quieting the mind, right? I think that is something that is would be helpful for people to learn. And so when we look at that, okay, well, quieting the mind, because that helps us tune in, right? So how do you do that? Well, there's a number of different tools that you could use for that. So it can be from finding a meditation class to go to and learning some meditation tips and tricks and how to do that. It can be going on to YouTube or online source to get some sort of guided meditation. So I think meditation is one of the keys, is learning, using that as a tool to quiet the mind. I think something else that people can do with regards to quietening the mind is to create some sort of a sacred space for yourself within your home that is a place that you can go to, and it's quiet, and it is a place that you enjoy spending time in. Maybe you have candles, maybe you have a yoga mat you sit on, maybe it's a cushion.
Maybe there are crystals and spirit guide cards. No, not talking about anyone in particular.
Yeah, exactly. So, it doesn't need to be, and it doesn't even need to be that. It doesn't need, you don't have to.
No, I'm just joking there. Yeah. But, I think the point that you're trying to make is, correct me if I'm wrong, but just really personalizing it so it's a place that you feel great about and you really feel like you can be alone with yourself and that you're fully supported by that environment.
Absolutely. That would be one thing that comes to mind. I think having somebody that you can talk to is really important. Somebody that's on the same journey as you. So whether it's a mentor, a friend, a coach, a therapist, somebody who can be that support for you and just be a champion almost. Because it's really hard, I have found it to be very difficult to be on the journey of waking up and healing and doing it all by myself. And so I think finding that person or those people that can help you keep your head in the game, if you will, and keep, and keep you focused and, be that cheerleader and be there for you when things aren't so easy or when you want to talk things through. So I think having a person or people in place, I think at least one person to be a champion, if you will, I think is really important, to hold that space and to just allow you to be who you are and, support you in that.
Yes.
I think that's key.
Yes. Yeah. All of the above. I love it all. Oh, there's so many amazing pointers there, Michela. Thank you. I am very curious about what you are curious about right now.
Anything at all?
Anything at all.
Oh my gosh. I'm curious about so many things. I'm curious about everything. I'm curious about, oh my gosh. That's a big question, Andy.
I'll help you out there, sister. Don't worry. Okay, what was the last thing that really piqued your interest that made you want to explore or research it more?
Oh, okay. That's good. Good direction. Couple things, actually. The one thing that has caught my attention lately is, to be honest, is CBD oil. Yeah.
Funny you say that. I'm not even joking either. Like, I'm not just saying this for the podcast. It's totally been on my radar too, but I would love to know why. Why is that something that you're so curious about right now?
Well, it's timely, I guess. Everything, it's just, to me, everything happens for a reason in its own divine timing. And so just seeing the patterns come up. And so the CBD oil was brought to my attention by a number of different people. And by the third time it was mentioned, I thought, okay, this keeps coming up. What is this about? And so that was really the inspiration, is that I had colleagues and family and just various people who were using CBD oil or are using it as a way to, as a tool, to be honest, as a tool to support their mental health, if you will, and just allow them to calm the mind, calm the busyness of the mind, so that they're at a place where they can have more clarity and just function at a more optimum level, if you will. So that's really, and I didn't even realize that. One client of mine said she was using it for headaches. And I had no idea. And I thought, well, there's got to be something here. So that has inspired me to look into it and see how it can be used as a tool from anything from headaches to, like, for me in particular, I am a sensitive. And so I sense into energy. And sometimes that energy is not even mine.
Yes.
And so that, could be a way, perhaps, I can test it out, right, with the CBD oil. Like, how can I maybe use that as a way when I am feeling energy that I know that's not mine, that is unhelpful to me, that I can, maybe I can use that as a way to get me back to my natural state. These are just questions, right?
Yeah. Totally. Very similar experience in that, knowing a number of people who've tried it for various reasons. I'm also very curious to see how it would affect me in different states regarding different things, like, for example, with stress or anxiety, and how that might be affected. And also, like you, I'm an empath. I just wanted to clarify that too for the listeners out there. When you say you're, like, very sensitive, do you equate that to being the same as being an empath?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay, so we're on the same, of course. Like, why wouldn't it be? Yeah, similar thing. Like, I'm so sensitive to the energies, and when I say energy, that could be so many things. It could be people, it could be environments, it could be, things that happen around me, and events and situations. And so I would be curious to see if maybe my reaction would be different if I was taking CBD, and as well as sort of feeling that external stress, if that would have an impact on maybe anxiety that sometimes comes up for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. What you're saying is totally resonates with me too.
We'll have to do this experiment, and then we'll have to come back, and maybe we'll even do a podcast episode in the future on our CBD experiences.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, that would be hilarious.
I know we're kind of going from one end of the spectrum about success, but I really believe that it's important to talk about the things that you've had to work through as well, because we have talked about some of those. But what's something that you failed at?
Oh my gosh, so many things. Here's the thing about failure, in my opinion. There's definitely been times where I feel like, whoa, this is, I've had like epic fails, right? But I think that when I look back on my definition of failure over the years, I feel like I'm failing all the time, because failing is just, to me, it's not really failure. It's like, oh, that didn't work so well. So what did we learn from that? And so I almost feel like now when I look back on it, it's like my life is just like one failure which has led to a learning or a growth. That could be big events like my marriage. My first marriage was, people could say that was a failure. I think it happened for a reason now that I'm looking back on it. But yeah, that didn't go so well. The first business that I had with my ex-husband, that didn't go as planned. People might say that's a failure. So my definition of failure has changed, over the years. And so now I just try and get comfortable with the idea that literally every day is a fail. Like, otherwise there's no growth. So like, even just as an example of the last couple of weeks, I have completely overscheduled myself. That is a fail. Like, that is like, that is just something that now that I'm looking back on it, it's like, that was not a good idea. So
do you basically in your mind reframe failure as, rather than looking at it as something that you did wrong per se. It's more of just a continual learning process.
I do now. I have reframed it now. I used to be really afraid of failure as a, as a perfectionist, right? If I wasn't perfect, I was a failure. That was
It was
my,
one or the other in your mind.
exactly. It was one or the other. But over the years, part of the healing of that wounding of the perfectionist is to overcome that fear of seeming to be imperfect, or being afraid of being judged for not being perfect. And so out of that healing process, I've really learned, and I'm still learning, to reframe that and be okay with the fact that, be okay with having, if I'm going to write a blog post, be okay with, just know that the first draft is going to be crappy.
How did you overcome that hurdle? Because that's a huge shift in your mindset towards living so many years as that perfectionist, or wanting to achieve that impossible perfection, and then actually being able now today to be like, you know what, 80% is good enough. Like, how did you overcome that?
That has been a really long process, and I am still overcoming it, if you will. I'm still on the journey. I've come a long way, a really long way, but it's taken me a really long time to do that. I mean, I've been on this journey of several decades, right? And so what I've noticed is the more I work on myself, the more the the more those wounds start to heal themselves on their own. So so for example, when I was moving through the initial healing stages of the speech impediment, to work on those pieces, I searched out a speech therapist because I wanted to work on the speech problem, right? The motor skill of the speech problem. We started working on the speech problem through skills, and what we realized was we weren't solving the problem. It wasn't going away. My speech impediment was getting worse because I was having anxiety about the fact that we were doing all this motor skill work and it wasn't working. It wasn't helping. And so that we weren't treating the problem. We were treating the symptom. This is what I'm trying to get at here, is that with the perfectionism and with the failure, like that fear of failure, or the perfectionism piece, that is a symptom. And so that's why we have to uncover the truth and the wounding of the core issue that is causing the perfectionism, that is causing us to fear the failure, to fear making mistakes and not wanting to quote unquote fail. And so bringing that then back to the original question, which was the fear of failure, and how I'm, learning how to be more compassionate with myself and kind to myself through that process and the reframe. It first took me that look at, well, what is this about?
So it wasn't obvious. You had to basically stumble into that evolutionary process of overcoming it.
Exactly. I first had to figure out, what am I dealing with here? Like, why is this happening? Why do I have, why
limiting belief in your head?
Exactly. Why do I have the limiting belief? Why is this happening? And so then through those series of whys and that inquiry and that self-inquiry, that's how I then pieced together the story that I told earlier about my childhood, and I pieced it all together, and the stutter and how I overcame that. It was through asking those why questions to determine the source and, what was really going on. So there's lots of literature nowadays that, will shortcut the process, like Brene Brown, right? She talks about
Love Brene.
Yeah, me too. She talks about the fact that perfectionism is a cover-up for shame. And so really then we need to look at the shame. So that's what's underneath the perfectionism. And then we need to look at the shame. And so where does that come from? And, what is that all about? And so that, I think, is the first step, is to uncover like what's really going on. Like, what is the truth? Because the behavior is the symptom of something greater. And then once we start unpacking all of that, that's what I did, was that self-inquiry, that unpacking it, really understanding it. I went to therapy for many years, and we started to really then dig into the family system side of things, stopped doing speech therapy because that wasn't working, started doing more family systems therapy, figuring out where, what the core wounding was all about, and then rebuilding up my confidence and my skills. And then, funny enough, once I started to rebuild that confidence and really understanding myself and where that wounding was originating and how I needed to then start to piece that back together and heal that, the more confidence I got, the less I stuttered. Interesting. So I didn't have to work on motor skills. That was not the thing to work on. The thing to work on was the confidence.
It's a light bulb, because I feel like so many people struggle with this. It's like a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. They're not addressing the actual deep-rooted trauma. They're addressing the symptom.
Exactly. And so the more confident I got, the less I stuttered. And then I used tools for that. So I used the therapy to help me with the discovery process, a lot of different, journaling and reading up on psychology and learning about the human brain and all of these things, this self-study that I did as well as working with practitioners, so that I could start to really integrate the learning. And then I decided I was going to do something that I had always wanted to do, but was too scared to do, was to learn how to dance. And so
that's really putting yourself out there.
Exactly, because what happened was, and again, spirit calls in many interesting ways. We just need to be there to listen and to hear the call. I had walked into a Spanish bistro and was having dinner there one night, and this flamenco dance troupe comes on the stage, and the principal dancer starts to dance, and she's dominating the room, and she's got this energy that is just like on fire, and she is being seen and she is being heard. And something just woke up inside of me, and I didn't have words for it at the time, but I saw her and I thought, I want to learn how to do that. I want to learn to stand there and be okay with people's eyes on me. And so I used dance as a tool to get confident. That first year with dance, I was, my teacher wanted to put me on stage. I had extreme performance anxiety. I was 30 years old, extreme performance anxiety, and she wanted to put me on stage. By the end of the first year, I did end up performing on that stage. And then after, many years of being on different stages, my confidence grew. But I used dance as a tool. So the tools and the teachers are everywhere. As long as we know
I love this.
right? Yeah, as long as we know what that core problem is that we're dealing with, then we're dealing with the right thing.
The tools and the toolbox metaphor is just so prevalent in self-growth, and it just speaks to, your personal story that you shared and the dance element. I mean, there's so many resources. There's so many different tools that are available to us at all times that can help us to develop and also refine different qualities and skill sets that we want to achieve or learn in our lives.
Absolutely. And so the tools, identifying what the main root cause is, that's key. Having the right tools, that's also key. Having that drive and that inspiration to want to grow and want to heal, that is also very important to staying on track. And then having those support systems in place are so key, because the journey is not easy. I mean, it is you are a spiritual warrior. Anybody who is on this journey of healing and waking up and becoming whole is on the road to being a spiritual warrior. And you got to surround yourself with other spiritual warriors, and you got to just find ways to be fierce about staying on track and really being persistent and sticking to it, even though it's so hard. And, there's plenty of opportunities to get knocked back, but staying the course, that's what it's all about.
What has been one life-changing or defining moment or time in your life?
There have been a number of pivotal moments. I would say that the one that stands out for me in this moment is when which led me to start my own coaching and consulting practice, was the moment when I was really going through a difficult time with my marriage. And at the same time, we had a business. And so we were also business partners. So that was also, we were having, there were some issues there. And my father had been diagnosed with cancer. And so then that third element came in around his health and supporting him and supporting my mom. And all of these events came together in this perfect storm. And I was really just kind of had a come to Jesus moment with myself, which was really about, okay, if 10 years from now, the situation that you're in with all of these things that aren't really working well for you, if 10 years from now, the situation remains the same, are you going to be okay with that? Because if you're going to be okay with that, then just suck it up and just get on with things. If nothing changes and all of these things that are not working in your life or are broken or just, draining you or are negative influences or toxic or whatever, if nothing changes, then, and if you're not okay with that, then you need to make a move now. Don't wait 10 years from now, 5 years from now. If you're not going to be, if nothing changes, then you got to make a move now. And that's what I did. And I changed pretty much everything in my life from that defining question, because I knew that there needed to be a breaking point. There needed to be a change. And I just had to really get honest with myself. And it was really hard. I had to start over in many areas of my life. And it was, but that breakdown and that falling apart of literally every single area in my life led to the rebuilding of what it is now, almost 10 years later, and the work I'm doing and all of that. So it's good to have those truthful talks with yourself from time to time. I think it's hard, but if the pain, if you're listening to your soul call, if you're listening to your spirit and it's just not working. And it wasn't for me. I was spinning. I was frustrated. I was exhausted. I was burning out. I was all these things. I just knew a change needed to happen, and it needed to start with me.
The way in which you describe the breakdown, I often say, it's a lot of times the breakdown we have that ends up allowing us to have the breakthrough. And it sounds like in that case, that was a really pivotal time in your life. And oh my goodness, the questions that you just said, I think are so important for people to consciously and continually commit to asking themselves as those check-ins in their life, because that is what leads you to those really tough conversations you have to have within, but that's what ends up leading you to that through.
Absolutely. And we have to be honest with ourselves. And that's another version of stepping into our voice. So stepping into our voice can mean many different things. It doesn't need to mean being a speaker and speaking on a stage. It can mean, stepping into your voice can mean signing up for that dance class, even though you have performance anxiety. It can mean, having that tough conversation with yourself and just asking yourself the question. It can mean, saying no when your habit is to say yes. It can mean putting up your hand and volunteering for something or signing up for something that, you wouldn't normally do. It's all of these things. It doesn't have to be the grand gesture of public speaking or writing a book. It's literally being your own advocate, being your own best friend. That is, to me, that is true empowerment. Like, that's what we're doing, right? We're building our own sense of empowerment by doing that, and learning then to trust ourselves, to look within for the answers. That is the ultimate in empowerment.
That's amazing. Empowerment, you just summed it up so beautifully in one sentence. If you could recommend one book that could positively change someone's life, aside from, of course, some of your own writings, what book would it be?
There is a book called The Feeling Good Handbook, and that is the one I would recommend. That is a really good tool for understanding your own cognitive distortions and limiting beliefs. And so it's a really good way it's a good self-diagnostic tool to really start learning about your own patterns and what your tendencies are. And like we talked about earlier, once you know the truth of the wounding that you need to address, then you can move forward from there. And that's a good book to help diagnose what some of those negative, unhelpful patterns might be.
What quote do you live by, and why that one?
What quote do I live by? There is a quote by Anais Nin, and you may have heard it before. She says, "The day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom." And I love that quote because there's so much wisdom in there when we really unpack those words, because it's so true. It's the risk is greater when we remain where we are, when we hide, when we shrink back, when we are not stepping out and being our full selves, our best selves. It's actually more painful to do that rather than to take the risk and the leap and the courage to grow and blossom. So I love that, because that's really, I think, a guide that I've used in my entire life when I'm looking to up level and to expand and grow to my next level. I always remember that.
That just made my heart smile. That was so beautiful. What do you feel most grateful for in your life right now?
One thing that I feel most grateful for is courage. That's what I would say, is courage. Courage within myself to listen and to heed the call to continue to move forward. The courage that I see other people taking on a day-to-day basis to step into, their next best self. Courage. That is, I'm grateful for that. I'm inspired by that. And we're all on a courageous journey. If we're living on this planet, it takes great courage to do that, and to do it well, and to do it purposefully. So that is what I'm most grateful for right now.
If you could have lunch with one person, alive or dead, who would it be?
Oprah just popped into my mind, so I think I would say Oprah.
Do you have any guilty pleasures?
I love chocolate, and I love red wine and chocolate. I would say those are two things. Of course, I'm going to choose something that's related to food, but
okay, that's perfect, because my last question, if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
It would be fries. It would be French fries. It would be some kind of potato product. I love potatoes. I don't know what, I think it's just like the carbs and the sugar. I don't know what it is, but potato chips, roasted potatoes, mashed potatoes, French fries, any kind of potato. That's, I think.
Okay, so if there's anybody out there listening who works for a potato product company, you have a guaranteed spokesperson on Pave Your Paradise podcast right now. And I know she would do really well with the marketing of it too. I'm just saying. Oh my goodness. Okay. Winding it down now. What are you most excited about that's coming up for you?
Oh, wow. Next year, I'll be going into my 10th year in the iteration of my coaching and consulting practice. And I'm just really excited about the constant evolution, to be honest. I mean, for me, it's about the big picture. It's always about the big picture. And so just that constant evolution of, oh, what is, I'm having so many great conversations and connections with different people, and finding, collaborations and partnerships with people who are really value aligned. And I'm really excited about what will come of that, what those relationships are going to, what we're going to create together, what that ripple effect is going to be like, as I move into that next year. So that's, I think, one of the things that I'm most excited about right now is just the future. Yeah, like the future possibilities of what that evolution might be.
And as this is Pave Your Paradise podcast, what does paradise mean to you? How would you personally define paradise?
For me, paradise is equated with freedom. And so some people can call it sovereignty. I call it sovereignty sometimes, being able to be your sovereign self, being able to be free of the bondage, free of, the pain, and truly be in bliss, I guess. That would be one way of describing it. So freedom, bliss, sovereignty, smiling on the inside. That to me is the ultimate in paradise.
So good. And is there anything you wish we had talked about today?
I think we covered a lot of juicy topics. I don't think there's anything that we missed.
Yeah, we had deep and delicious convo. And how can I and the audience of listeners serve you? How can we help you in the highest way?
That's a really good question. And I think that for me, it's, what I love to see and what really lights me up is when people are taking those courageous steps to step into your voice, give yourself permission to tap in, to listen to your inner wisdom, to give yourself permission to be seen and to be heard. That to me is the ultimate, because that's what it's all about for me. And if all of us are doing that and we're all living our truth, then we're all growing, we're all evolving, we're all stepping into who we're truly meant to be. And I would love that, because then we're all modeling it for each other. And that just gives us all the strength to keep doing it and to keep doing it. And so that we can reach that level of freedom and bliss. And it takes a team to do that. And so that, I think, is my big ask, is just give yourself permission. Yeah, give yourself permission and step into that, and don't give up. Because we're all learning, right? We're all learning from each other. We're all getting inspired from one another. And it's so important to keep that circle going. So
Yes, I love it. Where is the best place to find you, to learn more about you and what you do?
So I am on most social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. My website probably is the best hub, michelaquilici.com, michelaquilici.com. That's probably the best place to go, and then you can find all of my links on the website.
Amazing. Michela, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. For everyone listening, I just want to say this woman is someone you definitely want to follow because she is not only going places, but just such a sweet soul on this planet. And she's doing so much goodness in this world. Thank you so much for joining me on Pave Your Paradise podcast. I wish you the most beautiful day.
Thank you so much, Mandy. It's been such a pleasure and so fun to chat with you today, and just love what you're doing in the world, and just so grateful to be part of that journey. So thank you.
I will say too, Michela and I definitely support one another, and we met by chance, but I feel like we remain friends and soul sisters by choice. And I really just want to say, as a beautiful example of especially not just women supporting women, but souls supporting other souls, you know, this relationship that we've developed is one that I really appreciate because we constantly are there for one another. So just putting that extra love out there for you guys. Uplift someone else today, you know, show someone else out there who's doing some great things in the world some love, and just support them too.
Absolutely. Great advice. Love it.
Thanks so much for joining me. If there's anyone you know who you think could benefit from hearing today's episode, it would mean the world if you'd share it with them. Love what you heard? Then please subscribe. If you really love what you heard, then please leave a review with your honest and loving thoughts. This podcast wouldn't be possible without your support. If you feel called to, please make contributions to my podcast fund that helps me to keep it going strong, bringing on amazing guests for you, and to continue the ripple effect of spreading goodness in the world. I appreciate you, your time, and your energy, and I love hearing from you, so drop me a line on social media. As always, I'm wishing you a positive day and your own piece of paradise. Until next time, sending you love and light, and keep shining.